Is this everybody, do you think?
Yep, I will, you give me, if you're ready, I'll get the meeting
ready.
started and then I'll turn it over to you.
Sure.
All right, we'll call the meeting to order. Overview of Zoom meeting operations. Everybody knows the rules by now. Ask to speak, ask the chair or one of the other board members to speak, and from there we'll get you in. Anything further that needs to be added or removed, Valerie? If we
No,
remove,
just a warrant to be signed under regular business.
if we remove one thing, we'd be done. All right.
The warrant till next Monday.
Planning study for intersection of Vermont 116 and Lincoln Road and Briggs Hill Road alternatives presentation by Dubois and King. Here you go.
Thank you. So a little bit of background. Jenny Austin from Boys and King, and we're doing the intersection study for this project. We started earlier this year and we'll be wrapping up the end of September. The goal of the project is to come up with a report to talk about some alternatives that the town can consider in the future for the areas that we'll be talking about. So a little bit of overview. I'm not going to read everything on here, but these are just quick preview of the things that we'll be talking about, basically the items that are covered in the scope of work for this project, and we'll go through each one. So project overview, develop a scoping study report identifying alternatives at the project area for the town to consider for future improvements. And there's three kind of mini focus areas in this one intersection area that we'll be talking about. So the three focus areas are shown here, and in the RFP for the project, the town has given a little bit of a priority level for each one. Number one, having to do with the 116 Lincoln Road intersection. The main concern being limited sight distance due to the Vermont 116 bridge that was reconstructed not too long ago by V-Trans. Number two being parking that gets overflowed onto the road due to Bartlett Falls on Lincoln Road. It's a concern for the town. And then number three, basically the Briggs Hill Road intersection at Lincoln Road, and pretty steep coming down that hill there. So sort of the beginning of the project, the first step was always the kickoff meeting. We met with the town and Mike Winslow, who I believe is on the phone from the Regional Planning Commission, talked about the goals, the focus areas, make sure that we were all on the same page about what we presented in our scope of work, and kind of talked preliminarily about alternatives, kind of bounce some ideas off of him in terms of what level of improvements they might be looking at. As you'll see later, there's some low cost measures and some that are quite expensive. So just kind of get a feel of, if it's something that might seem a little on the lofty side, whether that's something that they still wanted to at least consider or not. And then just kind of getting some general input from the town on the project area. Obviously, the town knows the daily happenings of the road, better than we do coming into this project. So just discussing the three focus areas to move forward.
Was the town of Lincoln involved in that discussion, or just the town of Bristol?
Just the town of Bristol, I believe, and Valerie can correct me if I'm wrong. I know that there's been discussions with Lincoln prior to this study getting started. So
Actually, the town of Lincoln that inspired this study, because, they brought it to our attention. It's been brought to my attention other times too, but this opportunity to have the Regional Planning Commission provide some grant funding to move this project forward was really stimulated by the Lincoln Selectboard.
Yeah, they came to us and asked if we would reach out for the money because they couldn't, because it wasn't their road.
Right.
Is that right, Valerie?
That's right. Yes.
As I recall, Lincoln had been invited to that previous meeting, but did not attend.
And this one as well. And previous ones.
So the preliminary work, just go out and take a look at the existing conditions, the speed limits, take a look at that. 116 is 40 miles per hour. and Lincoln Road and Briggs are at 35 miles per hour. Just kind of collectively gathering information for the report for the town to have for the future. Looked at average annual daily traffic volumes, which is kind of interesting right now with COVID. So 2019 volumes were higher than 2020, which normal years you wouldn't expect that, but due to COVID, makes sense. There's a 15% drop in the daily traffic volumes in general. So 116, so the way V-Trans does their traffic data, it's by roadway segment, and the segment here happens, one segment ends at Lincoln Road and the next one starts. So we kind of have the ADT on both sides. And to the west in 2019 was 4920, and to the east is 3750. And then on Lincoln Road in 2019, the ADT was 1887. So one of the main, the main issue that we discussed with the town in terms of the Lincoln Road intersection with 116 was the site distance. So we went out and measured the site distance from the stop bar and compared that to what the AASHTO guidelines are. And the AASHTO criteria is based on what the speed limit is. So here you'll see it's based on these vehicles on 116 traveling, the speed limit's 40 miles per hour. So in the criteria tables from AASHTO, the intersection site distance criteria would be if a vehicle could see out to the end of this yellow line at 445 feet. And there's also what's called stopping site distance, and the criteria for that is 305 feet. So basically the stopping site distance, if you're traveling on Vermont 116 and you have to slam on your brakes, safely in time before you reach the intersection, that's what the stopping site distance criteria is.
But that's provided the car is at the stop bar and not back 10 feet, because you can't see it.
Yeah, there's a lot of variables there. In this case, the stop sign itself is back further than the stop bar. So what we measured, is at the stop bar. And then the intersection site distance criteria is more of more of an ideal situation where, they can have enough time to see the vehicle and the vehicle can get out in time. So in terms of V-Trans standards, really the stopping site distance is kind of a minimum, and then ideally meeting the intersection site distance. And this is a state route as well. So the available site distance, which is what I say measured at the stop bar, but what we did when we're out in the field is kind of checked as the car, where are they actually stopping, which in reality is probably a little bit in front of the stop bar. And that measured to be 395 feet. So sort of in between the stopping site distance and the intersection site distance. And we'll talk about the site distance a little bit later on as well.
Now people know that.
One thing we looked at, something that kind of came up in our discussion at the kickoff meeting was, it sounded like when they reconstructed the bridge that the approach to Lincoln Road was changed a little bit. It sounds like it used to kind of slope up more than what it does now. So we don't, part of this project, we didn't have survey data just due to the limited funding. So, but we did what's called Lidar Data. I'm not sure if you're know what that is, but basically it's kind of big picture. We can get, they have a state database where you can download. It's not as accurate as actually going out and surveying it, but for the scoping level, phase, when we're really looking at big picture, it can help give us some information when we don't have that detailed information. So essentially, this would be a car. Here's 116, the edge of shoulder. Here's the stop bar, and that's where the stop sign is. And this dash line is approximately the existing grade. It's not exact because we don't have real topo survey data there. And we just kind of showed what the V-Trans standard is. They have a standard approach, grade standards for what that should be. especially since it is approaching a state roadway. So it looks like, the way it is right now is essentially because that's what the V-Trans standard shows. And essentially, it's to, by not having a steep slope right there kind of gives a level space for the cars to, see better. We looked at crash data as part of this as well. So V-Trans has what's called their high crash location report. It's not updated yearly. The last one was the 2012 to 2016 is their latest high crash location report. This intersection was not listed as a high crash location with those crashes. So what we typically do is we take a look. V-Trans has an online database of crashes. So we look at the last 5 years that's available, so 2016 to 2020, and found there's a total of 8 crashes that were, so a couple of these are, it's not right at the intersection. What we typically do is look at crashes that would be within the stopping sight distance of an intersection. So there's 8. There's kind of a little bit of a summary of what those were in terms of there's 1 rear end, 4 left turn and throughs, 2 single vehicle and 1 unknown. Just kind of a summary of the crashes there. One of them involved a moose, which I actually don't see that very often when I come across this data, and only one of them was during snow conditions. So based on,
Because they don't keep track of the almost accidents because there's been a lot more.
yeah, that's a
there.
good point. Yeah, that's true. This only includes crashes that are reported that get into the
Right.
database. So yes, there's definitely, and a lot of these type of studies will come across that where people will know that there's other crashes, but we really don't have a way to quantify those other than what's in their database. But yeah, that's a good point as well. So using those, 8 crashes, it's significant. It's not, doesn't seem like it's really high, but when you go, we did a quick calculation of, the high crash report, the way that it's summarized, there's, these formulas based on the number of crashes and the ADT and that sort of information to come up with basically a ratio of 2 different numbers. And the ratio we get using the data for this intersection, we get 1.02. And then the high crash location, so anything over a 1 is technically a high crash location. So this is based on the 2016 to 20 data. Our findings is that it is just barely, it doesn't seem like a big number, but that's also driven by the ADT. So if this had, an ADT of 50,000, then 8 crashes wouldn't, it would be a lower number there and it wouldn't, but it's not a low ADT, but it's, relatively low compared to, an interstate or that sort of roadway. And we take a quick look at environmental data. This is kind of a big picture scoping study, but we do want to see if there's any sort of red flags, if there's any alternatives that might have big impacts. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Usually one of the big ones that will come up are wetlands, but there's actually none in this area. The biggest one that's come up is this habitat block here. We'll talk about later. So the project alternatives, as we talked about earlier, we broke them down into 3 focus areas. Each different focus area has a different goal. So each different focus area will have a different set of alternatives that we looked at. And we really geared our alternatives around trying to minimize what that concern was for that specific focus area. You'll see there's some, I say short-term and long-term, but I guess it's really more, low cost versus, high cost, and some might, mitigate better, but it might have a higher cost to it. So this really gets into the, I guess the big part of the presentation. What are the alternatives for the project? And we'll talk about For each focus area, there'll be kind of an overview map, and then we'll talk about each specific alternative. So this is the map for the Lincoln Road intersection. So we have 4 alternatives, and we'll be talking about later just kind of getting some general input. So I'll go through all of them, and then we'll kind of open it up. One of the goals of this meeting is to get input on the different alternatives, and then after this meeting, if there's any, we'll talk to Valerie and Mike, and if there's any tweaking that we need to do to some of the alternatives, we can do that. But the main goal here is to get input on what folks would think of the different alternatives. Oh, let me go back. So I'll just list them real quickly. So we're calling this one is a Lincoln Road intersection focus area. So the first alternative would be to install intersection conflict warning signage, and I'll show you what that means on the next slide. So that would be a new sign here and here, and we'll go over what that looks like in a minute. The second one would be to review the stop bar location here. The third alternative would be to install a traffic mirror. And then the fourth alternative, which also, would obviously be the costly one, would be, so the main goal that we're trying to do, the main concern here is the sight lines. So obviously we can't redo the bridge that V-Trans just constructed. So we're kind of assuming that would stay where it is. So if we can't move the bridge to get better sight lines, if you move the road, then you can see back to the bridge and get those sight lines. There's a bit of a trade-off, if you improve one thing, you might have another concern. So we'll talk about that later too. So the first one, I think it's kind of a newer technology. I haven't seen any of these signs myself. I think they've been starting to pop up a little bit. There's none in Vermont that I'm aware of. I was actually introduced to this another project that a co-worker is working on. They're talking about one of these signs. So essentially, this is the intersection conflict warning signage. So essentially there'd be, it's radar detected. So there'd be a sign. There's not really concern with the sight lines going to the north or east. So this would, although it does show up as both, but primarily on the west side. So basically, the two signs basically talk to each other. There'd be one at the intersection and one west of the intersection. And if there's a car at Lincoln Road intersection, then this intersection ahead sign would start flashing. It's kind of like one of those, like a pedestrian crosswalk, when you push the button and the lights go off kind of thing. So it's essentially one of those type of signs.
That would be on 116?
Correct. So that's another good point. It is a state road, so it is something that would have to be coordinated with V-Trans to get their approval of. I'm not aware of any in Vermont, so that's kind of, would have to be a discussion with V-Trans if that's something that the town is interested in.
So if they come to Lincoln Road, it would kick off that sign. It would know motion, whatever, would kick off that sign. That
Right,
intersection.
yeah.
So is that all run by electricity, by solar?
They do have solar. They also have ones that connect into a power source. Cost-wise, I'm not sure what the difference is, but for the most part, I think a lot of them are solar. The second one is review stop bar location. So this is kind of a progression. So progression of photos. So if you're at the stop sign, so the stop sign is set back further away from the or let me answer.
Let's see, Sally says the driver in the Lincoln Road car, when sitting at the stop sign, needs to know there's a car on the bridge.
Yeah, so I don't think that, I think
That is definitely the problem I've seen many times. I come to the stop sign and I can't see there's a car on the bridge until I pull out and then there's a car right there.
Yeah, that would not unfortunately solve that problem. It would be more, that sign would be more to notify
People coming the other way.
people coming in, if they see that light flashing, hopefully they would, be more aware if a car tries to pull out. But that's correct, that wouldn't solve that problem.
I just mean that is a problem that definitely needs to be solved. So there needs to be some kind of a light that lets people know from the Lincoln side that there's a car on the bridge. That's where that's what we can't see.
Yeah, I think.
Like work in both
I don't-
directions.
I think the only issue would be placing the sign on the bridge, but that's something that we could see if that's something that's possible.
Well, the sign could still be in place. It would just alert people that there's a car coming.
I think it might need to be directly across the road from the stop sign at the Lincoln Road. You need to see it right in front of you, car on bridge or something like that, or don't come out because there's a car there.
Yeah, I think there's some opportunity to tweak where the sign location is. That's a good point.
And the state, to me, one of the biggest issues here is the guardrail. There's no way that the state's gonna be willing to do something with that, because if that guardrail, it's like Cross Street in Middlebury. If you're coming out South Pleasant Street, you can't see what's coming. And it's all because of the way they've got those guardrails there.
We met up there when the bridge was done because of this issue, and the reason we talked about the possibility of setting the guardrail back, but then it becomes a safety issue for the cars
Right.
coming the other way.
Mhm.
You can't support the guardrail. The reason the guardrail comes around is because the bridge had to be extended. They hit fissures in the ledge, and they had to extend the bridge another 10 or 15 feet, which with the bow in the bridge
Yeah.
pushed the guardrails around. Well, that's the reason. If the bridge had been 10 feet shorter, that corner would have been back
Right.
10 feet,
Yeah.
which would have made quite a difference.
Mhm.
But that's water under the bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah, literally.
Literally, yeah.
Because Sally's right. I almost hit somebody there, T-boned somebody there who came out, who did not see me. And she panicked and stopped in the middle of both lanes. And I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But she totally did not see me and totally scared the crap out of her, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I saw her coming and I stopped. But I think that sounds right. That happens all the time.
Yeah.
I'm forever riding my brakes through there.
Yeah, we'll look at the last one, see, if there might be a better place to put that sign.
Well, that was, in the conversation we had while we were standing out there, they're like, well, if you pull all the way up to the white line, you can see. And they moved the stop bar ahead as far as they dared,
Yeah.
because they didn't want the nose of a car sticking out there and sitting behind the stop bar.
Yeah, they do have, kind of coming back to the V-Trans standards, a certain distance. They don't want the stop bar too close to the intersection. And it is fairly close right now.
The stop bar is the last legal spot to stop.
Yeah.
So you can stop at the stop sign, but then you still got to proceed slowly to the stop bar. And then once you get to the stop bar, you look both ways. And if nobody's coming, you go. You just don't hit the stop sign. And then all of a sudden I can't see, and then dart out into the road.
Yeah, and from what we saw out there, it seems like, people aren't stopping at the stop sign.
Nobody
They're
stops at
stopping.
Maybe they should go back to driving school.
Yeah.
I think most people do stop at the stop sign. You're not going to see them from here if they stop, because then they have to creep out. And they don't ever look like they're stopping, but.
So
we come down with a plow truck. And granted, I will say the plow truck's a little higher up.
Right, yeah.
But we have plows on. And to my knowledge, since I've been here, we haven't had any issues with the plow truck coming out of that on the 116.
Mhm.
But there again, you sit
we're higher
above the
It is
guardrail.
quite a bit
Yeah.
higher, yeah.
We did have an issue with the plow truck was on 116 and
Yes,
hit one coming out
coming out of
of the
the,
Lincoln Road.
Yeah.
we were headed north on it and they came out of the bridge.
So you're one of the 8.
That was before 12, long
That would be, yeah, we before that.
So the second option, again, it doesn't solve all our problems, and it might not even be something that would come into fruition, would be taking a look at the stop stop bar location. So this is, the first photo is taken from the stop sign, which is back further away. The advantage of going back is that you can see a little bit further back, probably not to your ideal intersection sight distance, but you don't see the cars that are on the bridge. And then as you can see, as you get closer, this is where the stop bar is. You can see the vehicles on the bridge, but you can't see as far back as you can when you're back at the stop sign. I don't think, it's an option to take a look at kind of the middle to see if this is really the optimum. I think.
Well, you figure if the front of the car is at the stop bar, the driver is still back.
Yeah, the driver's a little bit back away from the stop bar, right? Yeah.
Now, who placed the stop bar? Was that the state? Did the state just determine what that stop bar went?
They did originally, and then we just keep painting it.
Okay.
Yeah, when they
It wasn't like we
did
decided that.
And
when they
also,
did the bridge project, they probably
Right.
moved it there.
and also a smaller car that, gets over the bike, I call it the fog line, gets right over the bridge. That first photo, you aren't gonna see that little white car until it's,
Right.
or
Yeah.
car until it's on you.
Yeah.
That's it right there.
So this, unfortunately, this might be something that doesn't come into fruition, but just kind of showing, you kind of have a different obstacle if you're at the stop sign versus at the stop bar. So something that we had looked at. Again, you're not gonna, even if you moved it to one of these middle locations, here you have a clear sign of the bridge, but you still I don't think you're still gonna gain that much distance away for your sight lines. And then the third one, another one, a lot of these aren't gonna really completely solve your problem, unfortunately, due to, the location of the bridge and the guardrail, as you know, but, we're just trying to come up with some alternatives that, improve visibility and help people become aware of each other on 116 and Lincoln Road. So another one that we have in here is one of the traffic mirrors. You've probably seen a few of them around. So again, it's not going to improve your sight lines, but it will just kind of help people be able to see, if there's any blind spots. So
Is there any data that shows an intersection with a mirror that actually they run the stop sign or don't slow down, but kind of a California stop as they refer to?
I'm not
Because
sure.
I saw the mirror, no car coming, I'm just gonna keep running.
Yeah.
Is there any data for that?
I don't know. It's something I'd have to look at. I don't know. I haven't actually been involved with a project that's installed one, so I'm not sure if that's out there, but that'd be interesting. Was there just something?
Yeah.
Yeah, we put one on the end of,
Fairfield and North here.
So if the guardrail
People-
was less solid for the top half, it would help with visibility. And I think a mirror across from Lincoln Road would be very helpful. for the blind
we've
spot.
gotten good comments on the one on Garfield Street.
Really? I don't even see it.
Oh,
Well, it's a mirror
Get a
on,
mirror.
it's
Mirror
on
on
North
telephone
Street.
pole.
here.
It's on the
Okay.
telephone pole on North Street. So you come down Garfield to North Street and it's right there on the telephone pole, so you can see down.
Yeah.
Toward North
And it's
Street.
been successful.
I don't know about successful, but we've gotten people that said that they really like it.
Yeah.
They can see.
Yeah.
The store on the corner, cars pulled into the store and stopped and you can't see,
can't
Right.
can't see
Okay.
south.
Yeah.
So it generated it.
And then the last one that we talked a little bit about for this area, can't move the guardrail to improve the sight lines, would be to move the intersection. Obviously, this is a costly alternative, but one that we've mentioned to Valerie and Mike. This was one that I talked to with them to see if something like this is something, it's even viable to show as an alternative, because obviously it's going to be a high cost. So it's in here. So there's a couple different profiles here. The top one, so you just ignore this one. Again, this is using that kind of the Lidar data that's not exact, but will give a kind of a big picture idea of what the grades look like, just to kind of show what that would look like. So if you follow along, this line would be kind of one option for for an alignment of the realigned. But as you will see, you'll be gaining sight lines because you'll be up here and the bridge will be further away. However, when you move it, you may have some slope issues. It's going to be getting, due to the existing terrain, we're showing about 15%, which is pretty steep for that section. So you kind of be trading your sight line issue with.
Would that be a
some
winter
steep slopes.
problem where traffic could actually slide into the 116 coming down that 15%?
I mean, the Briggs Hill is about 15% now, so it's pretty steep. So I think, you'd be trading your sight line issue for, the steep slope issue.
I'm not following where you're talking about moving the road.
That big orange flag.
Yeah, but I can't, it's a,
Almost across from Bartlett's, just go right up.
So this is Lincoln Road right here,
yeah,
and instead would be, you'd still want access to the parking area here, but then removing, this piece of the road and tying in Briggs up here and getting rid of this Briggs.
okay, I thought it was kind of
Pretty
steeper
rocky and steep
there.
there.
Yeah, so you'd have to kind of block, but the road then would end up intersecting 116 a little further north.
Yeah, it would end up intersecting 116 over here. Basically, the goal would be to improve the sight distance, so you can't move the bridge, but if you move the intersection further from the bridge, then you have a longer
Thing before you. Okay.
sight lines, but then you would have, you'd be trading it for a new concern, which could be the steep slopes there. And then the bottom one we'll talk about a little bit later, but one of the alternatives that we're showing is to close a section of Briggs Hill Road. And if you did that, then you would be able, so this shows having to tie into Briggs Hill Road, which is a little bit of a controlling factor of what your road grade would be. But if you didn't have to tie in to Briggs Hill, we'll talk about that later, if that was in something that the town was closing the west end of Briggs Hill, then you would have some better slope opportunities to tie the road in. That makes sense.
I'm trying to understand how you're tying in Briggs Hill. It looks like you're just crossing over it.
So right here,
Yeah, they are, Michelle.
I didn't put a bolt box around it, but you'd be tying in right up here.
And then they would turn down, they would like hang a right down to,
Another one in there back.
So this would be the alternative we're talking about.
right.
And then Briggs Hill, instead of coming in down here. So basically the orange would be kind of the new project area. You'd be tying in Briggs Hill up here. And assuming you'd want to keep your parking area down here, tying into that. So anything in green would be basically removing that section of road.
And you're just about to the bottom of the steep part.
Right where we have to fix the slide.
Yeah.
Yeah, right there, and then right now, you got somebody putting a house out in there. Or a yurt, right now.
Where is that at?
Right on.
Just
Right on.
below the orange,
Down here?
No,
Right where the big section.
to your
is.
left.
To your left.
keep going down where Briggs Hill ties in,
Keep going,
keep going down,
Right
right
in there.
there.
Now go north.
There's,
okay.
right there, there's somebody putting in a yurt, and they applied for an access permit.
That's good to know.
So,
Was there any consideration given to that intersection? We know where it is, but to the right of it is your stop sign. It's kind of, there's an area there where they blasted out years ago when they did the bridge, and they've put
It's now flowers and grass.
flowers and grass there. Was
Where
that
is that?
Just right at the intersection.
just about 25
To the
feet?
east of,
To the
Yeah,
east.
to the east of there, right in
Yeah,
there,
right in
at
there.
that turn.
Right here?
Yeah,
Yeah, but it's off the road. I mean, it's that little gray section there off the road.
Yeah.
It's clear.
Yeah, I mean, bringing this up
just keeping
here.
the road and then going out over there.
Yeah. that
Getting your
was-
sight distance a little longer. I'm not sure it's gonna
Right.
improve the look of onto the bridge.
Yeah, I think, where this lands, it could end up somewhere different. We were trying to maximize, the sight line back to around here or so. So it's definitely, where this intersection is, that's definitely something that that could be tweaked. You know,
I was
just-
thinking right where the two.
Yeah, you gotta,
Right where the two greens, look, Michelle's gonna show you.
yeah, the issue is if you put too much of a
Right
hook there.
here is all,
Right.
they blasted out and there's
Right.
all grass and whatever, so. Joel, you're thinking of making this kind of go more this way.
Yeah, right about where that,
So that they don't come in here, but come out over here a little farther, without moving too much of this, right?
right. Was there any look at that?
I don't think there's enough distance between Briggs Hill and 116 to swing vehicles. I think
What if
you're
that
gonna find
was-
that's your problem.
Yeah, what if that was looked at with going down the hill, you go right, it's kind of a split intersection. It's probably not encouraged, but.
Right. Yeah, it wasn't looked into. We're looking at kind of maximizing what the sight lines are, but, you know, definitely be cheaper. Another thing, that usually V-Trans likes to have the T intersection, so that would also be something, if it was at the skewed level, you know, just taking another look at how that would tie in. But that's something that we can talk about later to see if that's something that they wanna add in.
That would make it difficult left turn, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
Swinging at it,
Yeah.
you'd have to swing wider into the road to make a left
the
turn.
trucks going up there now already going the other lane to make that, well, to make a right turn.
Right turn
Yeah,
on the
you're right
Lincoln
there.
Road.
Headed north on 116 to make a right turn into Lincoln, you already take both lanes.
Yeah, anything that kind of, I think, skews away towards this side might make it more difficult with, you know, knowing that the concerns on the west side there, but something to think about.
Okay, let me show you two comments. Ed Burke says, can we talk about slowing down traffic on 116? It's 40 miles per hour, but 50 to 60 miles is common.
Yeah, that's something that wasn't involved with this. When we had talked to the town and the RPC, we hadn't discussed speeds. I don't know if there's any sort of speed data available. You know, our impetus of the project was that the sightlines were the concern. So it hasn't been included as part of this project. I'm not sure what the speed data shows, so I can't really speak to what the speeds are.
But if
state highway
speeds,
anyway.
if speeds were slowed, it would shorten the sight distance.
If the design speed was lower, then the sight distance criteria would be lower.
Shorter,
That
yes.
is correct, yeah.
So then you might I guess the point is then you might fall into that category where
Right.
the sight distance, you have the sight distance you need to keep the road
Yeah.
where it is.
Yeah, we can note in the report what say, I know since it's on a V-Trans road, when it comes to speed limits, they would typically do a speed study. Unfortunately, my experience is that if existing speeds are higher than the speed limit, then they don't typically lower the speed limit. But you're right, if the design speed, something for the town to look at, if it could be lowered, then you're right that it would.
Well, we
shorter
petitioned them to
distance.
lower the speed here on Main Street or on all the village streets to 25, and they said that the speed, just exactly what you said.
Yeah,
Their data showed that the average speed was 37 miles an hour.
yeah.
So they called it an enforcement issue, not a,
Yeah, and
No,
it's
sight
definitely not
distance.
just your town that has, I know a lot of towns that have had that concern. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question about, since the state helped create the situation that your data shows as a high crash location, do they have an obligation to help resolve the problem? When it sounds as though,
I don't know that they see it as a problem. I
well,
mean, because they don't look at it as a high crash zone. So I don't think
Yeah, in
they
their
see it as.
last, I don't know, they probably haven't evaluated it recently. I know a 1.02 would typically not be high on their radar, unfortunately. I know they do, or at least they used to, I don't know if they still do, but I know they used to have a program where the 50 highest crash locations throughout the state, they really take a close look at those. But it's definitely, we didn't look beyond.
Sally, it sounds like you got to get our numbers up for us.
Okay, so
One thing I haven't looked at was kind of comparing when the bridge was installed and like the history of the crash data. That's something that we could take a look at to see. And it depends what year the bridge was installed, because the crash data didn't used to be as.
99.
98 was the other
88
one.
after the flood. We did the first one, the lower one first.
Yeah.
So there's probably not the greatest, crash data didn't used to be as good as what it is.
Well,
Now-
and prior to that,
Yeah.
you know, a lot of times if there was a truck in the bridge, there was nobody else in the bridge because it wouldn't fit.
Yeah,
So the bridge is wider now, which adds to
Increases
more
the speed.
speed.
right. Yeah.
Can I just-
Or did you want to finish? Yeah.
Well,
Finish up your
You
thought.
had said that the last 4 years, you looked at the data and it came out to 1.02. So it might be low, but I thought that I thought that level, anything over 1 equals a high.
It is quantified as a high crash location, and, you know, it's something that the town could talk to V-Trans about. Since it's just over that threshold, I'm not sure how far the town would get with that, but, you know, it certainly doesn't hurt to push the state and ask about it.
Was that, I'm sorry, go ahead first. Go ahead, Hannah.
Were you commenting what you said?
No.
Okay, well, my house is just on the other side of the bridge. I'm across from the Rockydale Gardens next to the church. And I've been hoping that there'd be a way to lower the speed limit, because people tend to go 5 miles over the speed limit. So even if you drop it 5 miles, even though they may not go down to 30 or 35, at least instead of doing 50 or 50, you know, they'll come down a little.
Right.
And as you mentioned with the sight lines, at least if traffic is going a little slower, you got more time to, you know, braking distance and that kind of thing. And I think it really is effective coming into town that has that sign that monitors your speed and tells you how fast you're going. Because I know I'm always like, oh, I'm at 35, you know, it always kind of helps me kind of just slow down. And I always, once I see that sign, then I'm good all the way into town. And I think if there was a sign further, if you change the speed limit to the north to slow that traffic down and that whole section slower, I think people coming in from town, once they get past that, where the speed limit changes to 40, then they just start booking.
Oh, yeah.
And you got that windy little section coming from town with no shoulder, yeah. And so it's really dangerous for bikers. And I actually saw someone walking one time and I just thought, good grief, you know, and so people come shooting through there, and then they hit another little residential area where a lot of us have old homes that are really close to the road, and they just keep, you know, busting out of there. And then of course you have the enforcement problem of the hot rodders who are going to blast through there no matter what. You can hear them, you know, roaring their engine, showing off. But I think just for majority of traffic, if you took that speed limit reduction that's closer to town and put it out to the north of the intersection, you know, it might have some impact.
Yeah.
And I know that everybody in the neighborhood would be supportive of that.
Yeah. From what we've gotten early on, you know, we hadn't talked about the speed issue, but we can talk to.
Are you allowed to incorporate it?
What's
Are
that?
you allowed to incorporate the speed issue as?
We can
since it's
talk
one of the
about it,
reasons
but it
we don't-
depends how, you know, if there's data available, I'll check with Mike Winslow and Valerie if there's any data available. You know, we can incorporate it into the report. We can talk to them about that.
Right. Ed also made a comment in the chat about speed. Ed Burke. We crossed the road on electric carts and tractors for our business, Rockydale Gardens. It's super dangerous. The state would not put up warning signs with tractor image. I don't know how we can talk about the problem at 116 and Lincoln Road without talking about excessive speed.
Let me read Sally's because I didn't get to read hers.
Oh, okay.
The plan seems too steep to be entering 160 safely in the winter. It would be like Briggs Hill into Lincoln Road, but with way more traffic to deal with. I think 2 carefully placed mirrors to help north travelers and those entering from Lincoln would really help solve the visibility problems. Ed said, I've asked the state to put up signs warning vehicles are crossing traffic. They wouldn't do it. Then what Darla just read. People step on it when they cross the first bridge and then head toward Lincoln Road uphill.
Yeah, we'll look and see if there is any speed data available. We'll talk to Mike and probably if there's any available would be the one that knows of that, and see what we can come up with for that. Like I said, it wasn't part of the concern when we started this
You're plugging in existing speed limits into your data to show what the sightline distances are.
Right.
Isn't it a matter of just plugging in a different number to say, okay, with this number, this is the sightline issue?
Yeah,
Without
if
having
we-
to have actual data on.
Yeah, if we put in, you know, it's basically a table.
Yeah.
You know, speed limit 40, sight distance is this.
So if
You know,
people are actually going
35.
50, the sight distance is actually completely different from what you're looking at.
Right, the table for what
Of course.
you know, the faster you're going, the longer it takes to come to a stop.
People, nobody's doing 40.
Right,
Your table shows if everybody was doing the speed limit, correct?
correct,
That
yeah.
area.
We don't have the data of what
Ed
they're
wants to know
traveling.
if a traffic light is out of the question.
It's nothing that we looked at. It wasn't, you know, I mean, I guess it's kind of related to sight lines. You know, when people were stopped there, I can talk to,
What about flashing light, like the one
How
down
about
at
flashing
Daniels?
yellow light?
Well, yeah, like down at
Yellow.
Daniels,
Yeah,
flashing north and south, red. I mean, I don't know that's not really gonna help you with the sight distance, but
was any consideration, did you do a height, the one slide back you have, the car was almost, you know, down a
Yeah.
little bit of a dip. Raising that up 2 to 3 feet.
we
maybe
didn't look at
5.
that because that wouldn't meet the V-Trans standard. What we showed,
Well, their sight distance obviously doesn't meet their standards,
Right.
does it? So
yeah,
after the Fishers, I remember that when I got on the board, and Peter had mentioned that had that been seriously considered, you know, a combination of mirrors and raising the road, maybe just above the standard,
right.
and maybe moving the guardrail, the lowering that bridge rail.
I
With a
think
combination of
lowering the
those three,
guardrail, I don't think that's a V-Trans, you know, their height. I don't think you're gonna,
or maybe pushing it back a foot or two with a design that's.
Peter said you can't.
We had all those
I know we did, I know you
conversations
did.
and with the state the day that we met out there, and it's like the bridge structurally is not designed to, I mean, I thought that some of it was a bit far-fetched, but I'm sure that everything is designed to hold weight at a certain weight, at a certain speed, at a certain height. And I think they said, you know, because we said if you could just move the guardrail back, leave everything where it is, leave the curb where it is and move the guardrail back.
And not all of it, just the last.
10 feet.
I think it was more, I remember those extra steel sitting in town in '99. I think it was like 20 feet, they had add on to that bridge, and that made it curl.
I just don't understand the logic of looking at the data without taking speed into consideration. I mean.
well, it wasn't, when we started the project, the main concern was the sight line. So, and plus, you know, being on Vermont 116, we were really more focused on primarily the Lincoln, but like I said, we'll talk to them about, see what we can get.
But the sightlines criteria is contingent on how fast people in reality are traveling.
Right.
And they're traveling really fast.
Well, our reasoning for in terms of the speed limit was if vehicles are traveling faster than the speed limit, then typically V-Trans won't lower the speed limit. I know it seems kind of backwards, but that's the way that they do their
They call
speed
it an
limits.
enforcement problem, not a speed problem.
But that's not logical.
I don't-
It's just not logical. So does somebody.
I can't say that I can't say that I disagree with you, but that's what V-Trans
They need to change
policy.
their thinking in order to seriously look at.
Right.
Man, there's a senator right behind you that's listening. I hope listening.
Good.
And maybe
Did you have a
Kristen.
question that you had hand up earlier?
I was just thinking that if there's any way that we could get, it sounds like it's very marginal, the sightlines now, even at 40, quote unquote 40, which is probably
Right.
not what everyone's traveling.
Yeah.
It's very marginal anyway, it just barely meets the criteria. And it seems like there'd be a case made, I think the suggestion was made earlier. What if we looked at 35 and 30 and see where what the impact is on the sightlines?
Yeah, we can definitely.
And that would give us a way to make a case to the state that traffic is moving too fast on 116.
You can do that, but they're do the traffic study.
Right.
And the traffic study is gonna show that they're traveling 45 to 50 miles an hour, and it's not gonna lower the speed.
I mean, we can incorporate in our study, what that table is and, where that dot would fall along the road for the different,
Yeah.
we can certainly include
But
that.
if they're traveling 50 miles an hour, then the sight distance needs to be
That's
something
over
very
the line.
different.
Right.
than what-
Yeah.
Yeah, if you have.
Then the state needs to fix the bridge, right?
I think
They either need to lower the speed limit or fix the bridge.
I was gonna say, to me, they created the problem.
Yeah, if we had a speed card up there for 2-3 months and then said, look at this, we can verify. The average speed here is 45, 50 miles an hour coming through here.
And with it also going up to 60 when you have some,
Exactly.
not the average probably, but
Yeah. And then
certainly the
say,
average is higher, because we know people always
They
drive
get
a
to
little
that
speed.
intersection and it's just like, open up.
Yeah, we can see if there is any speed data. We can also in our report, this is what the intersection sight distance criteria would be for 40. I don't know where the dot would be, but, say,
If people,
hypothetically speaking, maybe it's back here, we
back
can
in front of your
show,
house.
show a dot to convey what that would look like.
Yeah, it'd be almost 600 feet.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not like the state built the bridge, you're asking,
Returns.
but, somebody said three-way, what do they consider a three-way stop? Could they use stronger but narrower cables for the top 3/4 of the guardrail for better visibility?
I'm thinking anything with the guardrail, they're pretty, V-Trans is pretty set on, meeting certain, crash liabilities. I can't think of the word top of my head, but
Crash
does
worthiness?
the crash, obviously, I think I know the answer to this. The crash data, a guardrail on the interstate at 65 has got to be a lot stronger than a 25-mile-an-hour bank, in the street, in a village or
No, the guidelines for guardrail are all based on slope.
on slope.
The height is, I think, 21 or 22
Sounds
inches
right, yeah.
for the top of guardrail. And then depending on the slope behind the behind the guardrail, the length of the post varies. So if it's fairly flat, or if you have a lot of shoulder, they'll use a lot shorter post than if it drops right off, they use a longer post to hold
Yeah.
I
it.
know on 125 going from East Middlebury to Ripton, they've got 3 cables, so they can see the river. And could that? I'm just asking some questions.
yeah, I don't, that would be, I'm not sure
Question
what the
again.
answer to
V-Trans.
that is, but yeah, the post, typically all the guardrails pretty much the same. Like you mentioned, the standard guardrails, 6 feet, top to bottom, including under the ground. And then, certain situations would be 8 feet, but other than that, there's not, and then bridge railing probably has its, don't claim to be a bridge engineer, but they probably have, certain requirements as well.
So I just wanted to share that 2 years ago, 2 people actually called and explained about the intersection to me as their state senator. And so I called V-Trans and they sent someone out to the field and they said, we reviewed it and it meets our safety standards. So they don't seem to be treating it as problematic. I don't know if as part of your study, V-Trans is aware that you're doing this study, or they're talking to you, or they have like a project.
We haven't been
manager that
involved
This is a problem.
With
maybe, or-
V-Trans,
V-Trans is aware of the study. The district tech, Ashley Bishop, has expressed interest. I told her when this meeting was, but I failed to send along the meeting link, so that's my omission. But I will make sure that she knows that the meeting has been recorded, and I will give her a copy of the PowerPoint presentation.
And I guess I have a question for the board, and that is, as I worked a lot with the Middlebury Selectboard on things related to the big dig in Middlebury. And so if the board wants me to assist in any way, I'm happy to advocate for the town at V-Trans. But I would want to, be doing what you wanted. So I'll just
I think we need to.
kind of make myself available if you want me to go to that.
I think we need to get there, Chris, before we jump on you and have you go fight for us. I think we need to know what we want and have a plan. Because otherwise, they're gonna tell you that, like you said, it meets their safety criteria and they're not concerned about it.
yeah, in terms of, having them go out in the field, So the state standard, really the minimum criteria is to meet the stopping sight distance, which it does meet. And then if it
At 40
doesn't,
miles an hour.
right, yes, at 40 miles per hour.
There's the,
And then
Cross.
kind of ideally, the intersection sight distance, there is a sign on the west side of the bridge, the standard intersection ahead, signage. I'm not sure when that was installed, but so that's probably, they don't drive it every day, so they certainly don't, see the concerns that you guys do.
When you took your sight distance, you took it where the driver would be seated at 3 feet? Or did
So
you stand there and look?
Normally I would take a cone out, but what I did with this one, so there's the driver height and then the object height. So when I was out there, the driver height's 3.5 feet, which, I kind of go like this, go out in the middle of the road about like 10 in between cars. And then normally I would set a cone out at the stop bar, but turned out there's not a lot of traffic, but I was kind of surprised, there was a decent amount of traffic pulling out of Lincoln Road. So when a car, I could see the car pulling up and I'd go out in the road and, look to see if I could see it and then walk back, go out in the middle of the road, see if I can see the next one sort of thing. And realistically, they probably were a little bit in front of the stop bar, but kind of imitate what's going on.
I think we're focusing on the stop bar, and rightfully so, I guess, but if I was standing on my bumper, I'm at the stop bar, I can see. But I'm 6 feet back, sitting in the driver's seat. Am I correct in saying that? From the bumper, we're about 6 feet
Yeah, I don't
back.
remember the exact.
So,
but
yeah,
you're
the
back.
stop bar, that, if you had a camera on the bumper of your car, you could see
Right.
this great sight distance. But
Yeah,
it's where
But
you're
the car is
sitting.
not doing the looking.
The bumper's not doing the looking, the
Yeah.
person in behind the seat is at 6 feet away.
Yeah.
And you have a plow on, you're even further back. You have a small pickup with a plow.
yeah, we didn't look at trucks. Obviously that's different, as you mentioned, the height's different as well, but mostly looking passenger vehicle.
Following up on what Ed mentioned about the business trying to cross, is there any regulations or anything for state roads when they go through farm properties? When you have sometimes farms are split on two sides of the road, does that affect anything in the way they decide to do this speed? Because you really basically have an agricultural business on both sides.
That I'm aware of, except sometimes maybe some signage. It looks like you were about to say.
Well, I know up above the Fuller Farm, we used to have a sign there years ago when Bob was farming it.
Well, I know, like down Salisbury, the guy in the Knox had
They have a traffic,
no, they actually had a big culvert underneath
oh, yeah.
so the cows could go across, because their cows would cross and they wouldn't cross them on the seven. So when they redid the road, they put in a huge culvert for the cattle to get across. But normally, no.
So it doesn't change the speed at all, just people would make either put up their own a sign or they would do
Well, the state put this sign up, shows a, jumbling on a tractor,
Right.
the yellow.
the very thing that they asked for, okay.
Was there any looking at, I know the road that you had going down over the ledge from Briggs. No.
Yeah, that's no.
Into the bigger one.
Bigger one, right here. What about, any thought looking at, right about here, make the turn and, push this road over another.
You're gonna end up having to close Briggs Hill because there's no way you're gonna be able to get it down.
Yeah, Briggs Hill would get steeper, and it's definitely an option, but in terms of benefit to cost, I don't think you would gain too much from your sight lines with that.
Or you shut Briggs Hill down and just cross them over to Lincoln Road.
Well, the LAPC was in and asked, with all the flooding we've had up there, if we ever considered eliminating Lincoln Road and making it all go up over Briggs, so.
That's that former person who doesn't work there anymore, retired. He thought we should close the Lincoln Road and do away with it and send all traffic to Briggs Hill.
Because we replaced the road twice.
So we're gonna have to fix them. Or Hill too.
Pedestrian only.
Yeah.
So the second focus area that we looked at are the parking concerns on Lincoln Road, mostly during the summertime with Bartlett Falls and.
No, it's not only that. everybody comes out of Lincoln, basically comes this way. Some of them go over the Ripon Road and the lower upper notch, but sit there between 6 and 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. There's a lot of traffic comes off that road.
So for the parking concerns, the few things that we looked at, first one would be adding, there is a sign up here that says no parking 1 mile or something like that. I have a picture of it
For
later.
the next mile, yeah.
Yeah.
There's
Parking on pavement.
signs
Yeah, it's
all the
on
way,
pavement. Yeah.
there's
No parking on pavement.
Yeah,
3 or 4 signs all up through there.
yeah, and then there's some more down further. So one alternative, you have to gain compliance with people that are parking, but would be to add additional no parking signage along the road. A low cost measure, whether it works or not, you might get some people to adhere to it. Second alternative would be to find a couple places where, it's pretty steep on both sides of the road, but there's a couple areas that, this is just conceptual, so we didn't, we don't have any real survey data, but if you could add a couple paved parking areas to encourage folks to park there instead of parking on the road. And then the third alternative would be more expensive alternative to formalize this pull-off area into a paved parking area to define that area and get more cars to be able to park there. Hopefully more cars that are parked there would mean less along the road.
Or just create more cars.
They're
They're not gonna walk.
No.
they're packed anyways, even now, not being marked, they're still packed.
Oh, yeah,
When
yeah.
it's hot out and everybody goes up there and goes swimming.
So the first one, not too much to talk about, just adding some no parking signage, low cost alternative. It could also extend beyond the project area if desired. And then this is the sign, and then there's more signage, as you mentioned, up the road.
That seems to have helped, hasn't it, Eric?
It does, yeah.
It seems
No,
to
they
help.
at least
We
keep their
put those up there.
wheels off the road.
Yeah.
It has helped, the signs have helped, and Bruce is going up there more frequently in the hot days and just warnings on the cars and stuff. So with him up there, it definitely helps.
Were the signs installed somewhat recently, or?
Last
2 years, 2 years
Oh,
ago.
really? Okay. Okay.
Because we were up there all the time with, people would park right up along the side of the guardrail and it'd be
Yeah.
down to 1 lane.
And then the second alternative would be, and again, we don't have, real detailed survey information, but it seems like there might be, it gets a little bit steep over here. So I'm not sure, exactly if that length would fit or not, but just kind of conceptually, and it's a little bit, obviously it's further away than where people want to park. So people could potentially still be parked closer just for the sake of walking less to the falls. But this alternative would be a couple places where, it'd be paved to encourage people to park where you want them to, where it's safer. And then the third would be, there are people parking here already. It's, it's pretty rocky and it's not a lot of parking spaces. I didn't really count when I was out there how many I thought you could get out there, but kind of
That's where the Lincoln Road used to
formalizing.
go, over there and then up and around, right? Years ago, the Lincoln Road used to go over there.
I'm not sure we want to encourage bus parking.
Yeah, I guess the only reason I mentioned that was when I was there happened to be a bus that was parked there. So I didn't know if that's something that happens often or if it just happened to be when I was there.
I don't know, Friday I was drawing up there Friday afternoon, there was a Betcha bus parked in the left-hand pullout, headed up through, there's one parked there.
Yeah, the one I saw looked, I don't know, school field trip or something, but it's during the summer, so it's school type of bus. Even if it's not encouraged, get a few parking spaces there. Like I said, this isn't real, detailed topo. It does look like in order to really maximize space, you would need, I don't know how long it would be. This is just kind of a conceptual estimate, but it seems like a retaining wall would probably be needed on that side to really maximize the potential there. And this one would show 24 parking spaces. with some green space, you know, if the town wanted to do.
Oh, they'd be
Something
parking in there too.
Yeah, you could curb it. Well,
You're definitely getting less it's so rocky, or you're definitely getting less cars, because it just really, yeah, and so people are parking more just kind of
Right.
parallel, so you get.
Anywhere they
fewer
can.
cars.
yeah. Yeah, I drove
And then
through. Oh,
Go ahead, Ian.
I was gonna say, the nice thing about this, at least you're defining how many cars can park there. And so you have a little bit more control over just a completely open area.
I'm not sure how many can actually realistically fit there now, but it is pretty rocky and definitely not this many.
Right, and if you, you know, even though we're trying to sort of alleviate traffic there, if you create a safe spot where people are parking down here, that would hopefully be fewer cars perhaps parking in the more dangerous areas right off the road further up.
Yeah, the goal of this would be to maximize parking here in this area so that hopefully, I mean, I would assume this would be more ideal than, you know, this is where I'm assuming a majority of the folks want to be and not on the road anyway. So this is kind of the closest point for them.
But they still have to walk along the guardrail up the
All the way
road
up to
to
the
get
road.
to Bartlett's, and some people are using the lower part, which don't tell anybody it's nicer. But but yeah, then you still have to have traffic still going slow on Lincoln
Right.
Road, because now you've got cars and people blocked in by the guardrail.
Yeah, be careful because there was talk of a sidewalk from there up to Bartlett's. And that wouldn't be very feasible either.
A sidewalk on Lincoln.
On the back side of the guardrail, yeah.
So there's been talk about
That
it
would be
all the way
scary.
from Bristol
Yeah.
all the way to Bartlett's.
Scary.
Yeah.
There's no sidewalk on the bridge,
Millions
is
of
there?
dollars.
Huh?
There's no sidewalk on the
No.
bridge, is there?
No. Probably can't support it by their engineering.
So those are the alternatives for the parking. Does anyone have any thoughts on these alternatives?
I mean, I don't mind this idea. I just don't know that it's gonna alleviate more parking, people parking,
Further
or
up.
less cars up there. I just
They-
think it's gonna be safer. It's gonna be, you probably get more cars in there, but I think you'll still get.
The first part that they park is right up at Bartlett's. That's where they pull off, the first one's pulled there, and then they just work their way back down.
They don't start down here first. This
No.
is the overflow lot.
Yeah.
Pretty much, yep.
But if it's a nice lot, it might all start to park there.
Yeah, if that was paved, then
Yeah.
it may generate them to pull in there rather than go up.
Right.
It's
I think the hard part is that we all know it's a problem. We all know there's been parking on that road forever, and we know that it gets congested and that, you know, people walking and kids on bikes and everything else. But there's just there's not a lot of space to create parking either. So it's that we know it's a problem. We know it's an accident waiting to happen. What do we do? And I like these alternatives. They're not a complete solve for sure, but it's a place to start thinking and talking about it.
Yeah, and you could do a combination of, you know, this plus the little paving areas on the side. We didn't look any further than what we showed, but, you know, if there's other potential little pull-out areas.
Okay, I think. I'm just gonna read through the last three. I think the 350-foot mark along the bridge where there's safe distance for braking is not working. By the time a driver from Lincoln comes out, a car could be much closer to the intersection, making it too close to stop safely before hitting the entering car. Ed said, I wish I had a culvert. Now you can petition the state, Ed. It seems like the dirt along the road by Bartlett's is disappearing annually to washing away. It's getting narrower. I don't disagree with that.
And then the third focus area that we looked at, Briggs Hill Road, essentially the concern with the steep slope at the intersection with Lincoln Road. There's not much, unfortunately, we can do with the slope. One thing looked at before looking, you know, just kind of looking at the map there, you know, you think, oh, maybe we can tee it up, that would be nice, but with the slopes and the grades and the ledge there, it would just get steeper if you were to try and tie it in up there. So the two alternatives that we have are closing the west end of Briggs Hill in the winter time due to our the input around maintenance and winter time on the steep slope, and sounds like you might have some experience with that. That would be
I wouldn't
good
close
to
it.
know. And then the second one, closing the west end of Briggs Hill Road, essentially at this driveway, and allow for a turnaround, and then closing this section right here. So unfortunately, we really don't have a ideal solution for this one due to the grades. Another thing we had considered was tying, kind of similar to Lincoln Road, would be tying in, moving Briggs up here, but you're still gonna get those steep slopes, so that in terms of benefit to cost, I don't think that will be a solution.
I can't remember, is Briggs Hill paved only at the end, down the hill?
No, it's paved all the way up to
The
Parker's Farm.
So the first one, pretty self-explanatory, closing in the winter, just placing barricades at each end, and then the total length is approximately 1970 feet of roadway. So they're kind of similar alternatives. I'm not sure, how the town would feel about either of these. So definitely looking for input on both of these. And then the second one, like I mentioned, would be, a turnaround here, and then closing to the west. And also if you did close this, if you did realign Lincoln Road, you could get better grades.
You could shove it east and,
Right.
yeah.
Obviously that'd be, added cost with doing both of those alternatives. So there's always, pros and cons of each one. So be interested to hear.
Aren't there more driveways than that last one you said?
Yeah.
Because
The
there's
last one is Brian Ledoux Jr.'s driveway, which is just over the brow of the hill.
on this end,
Where would that be?
Gulfin Point.
Good God.
It's better to point so we have an idea.
That's why we're here.
I brought my
Way
box
down by
over.
that second dot, isn't it?
I don't think it's that low.
Is it?
So that's
There's his trailer right too.
trailer, so comes out right about here.
For those
For
of us
those of us on
viewing in,
Zoom,
that's a helpful
yeah.
reference, speaker.
Okay, so it's about 2 inches below the yellow circle thing.
And,
Is where the driveway comes out.
but then
Yeah, we can see the mouse, so someone can use the mouse and show us.
Right there is where the driveway comes out.
all right, wait a minute.
Okay.
Sorry, I got.
Yeah, right here. Yep.
Circling in, we're getting close.
Yeah.
So if you closed it after the last driveway, then you're closing it on the hill. Then you'd have to make a turnaround for the trucks.
You don't access through up here.
No, this goes up to these up here.
This is where the turnaround would be.
Yeah, so then pulling out on, if it's snowing hard, trying to go back up that grade again with no momentum, just on a dead stop is gonna be.
We get Lincoln to do that. We would
Well,
go all the way around and do that.
I didn't worry about it, but yeah.
Well,
That's my own concern with closing the road is taking back off again after we turn around, is taking back up the hill.
then you had the guy who just put the access permit. He's down here, right?
Yeah, so now you got him down
He's
there,
down here somewhere.
and if you're gonna go, well, if you're not going all the way down there, you might as well just finish going
Finish
out the
going
way.
down the road, yeah.
And then the other thing too is if you close the road, if Lincoln doesn't do it, then we gotta go all the way around
Through Lincoln.
through Lincoln to get to plow over to there.
About a mile and a half.
Yeah, about that, yeah.
Yeah.
It's no different than your sightseeing trips when you're bored.
Sometimes.
Did I say that out loud?
But my opinion, and this is just me personally, is I wouldn't close Briggs Hill. At least not at this point anyways. I mean, we haven't had any,
Knock on wood.
we haven't had any problems with Briggs Hill, as far as keeping it maintained during the winter time. And yeah, there are gonna be times where it's snowing an inch an hour and it's gonna be snow covered, regardless of what you do. Even flat roads are gonna be snow covered, but.
Well, the other thing we gotta take into consideration is the $500,000 to fix that slide too.
Yes, right, yeah. Yeah, that's another thought too, yeah.
So
A slide on Briggs or?
On Briggs, right back,
Right at the end.
right about where your,
Okay.
your second dot is there. Your
no, it's
dot.
further down, right about where the red line comes into it.
Oh, okay, right here.
Yep, right in there.
The road slide. So Jen, a question, not that I want to wrap up anything, but a question. Now, we all heard that V-Trans thinks it's a safe intersection. And if we want to do some minor things, the mirror, the lighted sign that says dangerous intersection ahead and things of that nature on the bridge, we have to go through them. And first of all, I'll refer my question to Chris. What's the possibility of them paying for these improvements? Number one, when they say, no, we don't see this problem. Or we're not going to grant you a mirror and signage and mirror and lights and flashing lights.
I don't think they would be close to the idea. I think it's definitely, definitely make that discussion with them. And they're, depending on which kind of sign, like the traffic mirror, that's not a very costly alternative, but I can't really answer what they would and wouldn't.
Can you go back to the one that shows the vehicle sitting just north of the intersection of Briggs and Lincoln Road? You had a grade, you got to break it, that one. And in that, with the signage and things, if that was raised a couple of feet,
Right.
not a lot, a couple of feet, just from the stop bar back, maybe 40 feet, 35, 40 feet.
How are you, how are you tying into the road if you raise that 2 feet?
116.
There's the issue. You either gotta come out and then.
Well, right now, you are flat.
Right.
I'm not
Right.
thinking,
And the reason, if you look at the picture there where the A is with the circle.
right,
See that little dip?
yeah.
That's what V-Trans wants, so the water doesn't come out into their road. And I doubt,
I hear you, Peter.
I doubt that you're gonna get them to allow you to raise that road so that,
With a drainage bar work
Yeah.
there versus, I'd rather have water going to a drainage bar than a car going into traffic. Somebody sitting in that car going to get hurt. I don't mean raise it like Briggs Hill, by no means, no, but right now you're almost flat. You're flat there. Or tilt down a little bit. The back of the car tilts down. I'm thinking up just a little bit.
Yeah, I think that would have to be something, we could run it past V-Trans to see, kind of comes down to
I'm thinking
their
we
approval.
look at River Road meets on the 116. Not even that steep. And that's, that comes down there. And that's past V-Trans specs because they took that out of their improvement years ago when they put the bridge in down.
because they were gonna have to go through Act 250 if they
They took
included
that
that.
out. So I'm not saying roads that come onto V-Trans roads are all flat. There are
Right,
some exceptions.
there are some that aren't. You're absolutely right.
It's definitely something we can, talk to Valerie and Mike, see if it's something that they're interested in. It's kind of hard to judge exactly what the site lines would be. We could estimate, what that would look like.
Excellent. I think we need to get V-Trans to do a traffic study and then meet with us with this presentation and research in hand. Can you petition V-Trans to do a study, or do they just choose to do it when they want to do it?
I don't know. If Mike doesn't want it, I can reach out to Ashley tomorrow and ask her.
V-Trans would do the exact same thing that we're doing right now. They prefer to have, basically this study is being funded with V-Trans money. So you'd end up pretty much with the same thing.
We'll come up, we'll have alternatives in our report, and then, most of them, at least any ones that have to do with the Lincoln Road intersection with 116, would be something that would need to be vetted with V-Trans. So, we have a contact with V-Trans that we can.
Well, I think probably the first step with V-Trans is we get some sort of traffic study, and if we know that traffic's traveling at 50 miles an hour, then the sight distance isn't adequate.
Right.
And we can argue that you need to lower the speed limit in order to shorten the sight distance. Even it's an enforcement issue at that point, but if you lower it, it makes it worthwhile for them to go and sit there.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, but I believe typically the speed data would be something that comes from the RPC, and then you get that data and do the study with the speed. And like I mentioned earlier, typically if the speeds are coming in higher, then you can certainly make a case for the sight distance concerns, and
the speeds are recorded by their things they put across the road, because it times the distance. It times the between the two counters,
right?
And that's how they get their speed data.
V-Trans does sometimes do speed studies, and I can look and see if there are data for this area of 116. If there are not data, then the RPC can conduct those studies. But as Jenny said, if the studies are saying the cars are going a certain speed, they tag the speed limit to what the cars are already going. You can make a case based on the sight distances. We could see how well they handle that.
I was gonna say, if they've done the study and they know the speeds are higher than what their sight distance say, then to me, it's not safe. That intersection doesn't meet their safety guidelines.
And then we can sick Chris on them.
It's not the only intersection in Vermont that doesn't meet the safety guidelines. So that's where they use the crash data to prioritize intersections.
But they redid the intersection not that long ago. And I understand that the reason that the sight distance isn't there is because they had to extend the bridge and they already had the curve set, but that's not our problem.
Yeah, we didn't create the problem.
Right. If they'd known those fissures were in there before they designed that bridge, it might have been wider, straighter.
It would have been changed, yeah.
Changed. They guess said, well, we'll order more steel and keep the curve, we gotta keep the curve going.
Yeah.
And then that's when.
Well, what happened was beams were already made, so they had to match the curve.
Right.
And that's where the problem came in. You couldn't straighten the curve after you already had 3/4 of the bridge built. Well, I almost think that is the place we should start, is to get the speeds and tell them that the sight distance isn't adequate for the speed that the cars are traveling.
That we're verifying with the study.
Agreed. Yeah, we'll work with Mike to see what data is available. The funding for this project ends the end of September through the grant source, but we'll work with Mike and get what data we can. And at a minimum, if we don't have the data, we can certainly include a recommendation to get the data to look at that.
Well, at the very least, if you can't get the data, at the very least, you can give us 45 and 50
right
of where the sight distance has to be. And then if we get the data later on, we can say, this is where it puts you, and it doesn't work.
Yeah, regardless of what data is there, we'll certainly include in the report where those points would be for the different speed limits. Mm-hmm. And the table as well. You just bring it right in from AASHTO. It goes, I know they do 20, I don't know if it goes less than 20, but goes way up to interstate speeds. Mm-hmm. Include that whole table.
Can I ask about how often Bruce or whoever is out there to enforce? I mean, if the answer is going to come back to enforcement issue.
So if it comes back to enforcement, it's a state problem again, because Bruce is only out there to patrol.
Bruce is on.
Is he?
Yeah.
He was on.
He is on. He's just lower in the screen.
So we're only contracted with Bristol PD to do so many hours. Bruce, can you?
Yes, we're contracted to do between 16 and 20 hours of enforcement. for the entire town. So if you wanted us to focus on one area more, we either take away from the other parts of town or you increase the hours.
But it is the state police jurisdiction. It's not yours, correct?
They are primary for the town, yes.
Bruce, would it, give us some data, some backup maybe? Could we use the speed card out there for 3-4 days in a row and see what the average speed is?
I believe as long as the state doesn't mind that we have it near the edge of the road, I wouldn't put it on the shoulder. So I'd have to talk to a property owner in that area that would be willing to allow us to put it on their property.
And the RPC already can do those speed counts as well. And I already have a permit to do them, so I wouldn't have to get another one.
What was that, Mike?
What was that, Mike?
The RPC can also do speed counts. And I have a permit from the state to do them. So I could get them out tomorrow. No, I couldn't. I could get them out later this week.
Is that a yes? We want him to do that?
Just have Valerie contact me with an email saying that they would request it so that I have something in writing saying that the town wants it.
Ed is volunteering his property in the
I
chat.
say Bruce, that's volunteering his property.
I'm volunteering mine.
There you go.
Mike, is that the one that goes across the road different than ours? That gets the traffic leaving town, going east and going west? So we could have data for both sides of the road?
If I have two tubes out, then I can determine which direction the cars are going and the speed that they're going. And if it's different between the two directions.
Be like nice to know what the new town versus coming in.
So you're talking, what we say, we're talking a little.
Those rubber,
Is pointed?
no, those rubber things that lay on the road.
What we were asking Bruce is one of those speed cards
We have a speed card.
with the sign on it. But the problem with that is people see it and they do one of two things. They speed up to see how fast they can make the numbers jump, or they slow down and do the speed limit. I mean, that's typically what happens, isn't it, Bruce?
Yes, but if we were looking at just collecting speeds, we would turn the sign off so it wouldn't display their speed. So they have to be right on top of it before they realize that it was there.
Is that what you do on Pine Street?
No.
That one never shows up when I go by it.
Then you're going below what the reading is.
Yeah, when I'm running, I'm really that slow.
Pickup runners won't pick up a lawnmower.
So those are the alternatives that we looked at. And then in terms of, we're kind of in the midst of doing evaluations, and as part of the purpose of this meeting is to get input, and then I'll be following up with Mike and Valerie to see if there's any adjustments to make and kind of finalizing the evaluations. So far in terms of, there's kind of different categories. Environmental resources review, the only thing that really popped up was the habitat block, which is kind of located where potential realignment of Lincoln Road would be, and have an email into our environmental folks. I'm not familiar with that sort of environmental layer. It sounds like it wouldn't be a big red flag, but I'll kind of be including more on that in the evaluation matrix that gets included in the report. Oftentimes on projects like this, we'll come up with an evaluation matrix. One of the categories is historical, archaeological. Those are typically more in, village areas that might have those concerns. So it's nothing that we're looking at as part of this project, but it's, always something to include in the matrix, although, should be unlikely with any of these alternatives. Another hot ones can sometimes be right-of-way impacts. Obviously for any realignment alternatives, there would be some impacts there. And then cost, which is always a big one. So we have some summary of, obviously there's different levels of cost for the different alternatives, the Lincoln Road. So that conflict warning signage, been in contact with a manufacturer that deals with those, to come up with a quote for that. So those are the ones that were kind of radar oriented, and it sounds like, we might tweak the potential location of them from what we have shown, but in general, for this type of project, to obtain and install approximately 22,000. Review stop bar, be pretty minimal, and put 500 or 400 there. Just take a look at paint. Probably not even that much, obviously, but depending on what sort of level of review you wanted, and whether you had someone go out and do it or not. Traffic mirror on Vermont 116, relatively inexpensive. Did a little bit of research on that, around 500 or so. There's different sizes, so I haven't quite tweaked what that would be, but kind of a ballpark figure. Obviously, the realignment of the road is pretty expensive. We have a little over 800,000 for that, and that includes, tearing up whatever road you're not using, so that you're not just leaving it there and people still using it when they're not supposed to. Then the parking, the new no parking signs, 4,000, that depends on how many signs you want. So it's kind of a, you could have less or more for that one. Designated parking along Lincoln Road. So that was the one where there's a couple different paved parking areas there. It's 27,000. The definition of the parking area. So we have shown at 650,000. A good portion of that would be assuming that a retaining wall would be needed. So this is just conceptual. So, if this is something that the town would want to go forward with, obviously we would want, a survey to really nail down whether that's, how accurate that is. We just assumed a certain length for that based on Lidar, which is kind of generic contour data that we created. And then Briggs Hill Road, closing the west end in the winter, that's not too expensive. Some barriers, closing west end of Briggs Hill Road altogether. So the turnaround, and then sounds like we might want to talk with Valerie and Mike about this one. Definitely want to move that over since there's that other driveway, but then there's also the new access that you have coming in. So I'm not. We'll talk to them. I'm not sure how realistic that is, knowing that new access is so close to the intersection there. Doesn't seem like it's,
I don't, if that's an option that you're looking to put on the table, if we close the road, that would become their driveway down to the Lincoln Road, is basically the way I see that working. It's not that far. So,
right, yeah.
I mean, if
knowing that access is going in so close to the intersection, doesn't seem too realistic, but we'll finalize that with Valerie and Mike.
Because if we close the road, then it would no longer,
Right.
we would no longer maintain it.
Yeah.
We have to check the class.
Yes. Or close it.
So the alternatives presentation meeting, that's what we're doing tonight. The purpose is to gather input on alternatives, talk about the pros and cons, talk about supports. We've got some good input on that. And then we'll follow up with the town and the RPC to kind of finalize tweaking the list. And then next steps will be taking alternative evaluations a little bit further. We have a lot of this work done already, but just, some of the environmental things that we're checking into, and that sort of stuff, basically coming up with an alternative evaluation matrix to put into the scoping report that really summarizes the impacts and the cost of all the alternatives. And then we'll be having one more public meeting, likely in early September. We don't have a date yet, but we'll have that soon. And kind of in coordination with that, but working on the planning study report, which will really be the end product for this project for the town to move forward with. And then the last meeting, we have one with the RPC. So typically projects with this funding source through the RPC, when it's at the end of the project, present it back to their TAC committee, just kind of summarize the project to them. And that is all I have, but question?
Yeah, so Joel mentioned earlier the challenge with the railing. I mean, I think it's kind of a recollection. I've been going through there a lot of times. It's a decorative railing, and it is hard to see through when you're kind of aligned with all those little posts. And I don't know if there's an alternative to that. I mean, Joel mentioned cables. Have you looked at that at all and seen if there's an alternative that's much easier to see through?
Well, there's I think in, I can't remember if Middlebury Cross Street they did this, but did they make like half of them like a 1 foot and then something up 3 feet or something like
I
that?
crossed it today, I didn't even pay attention.
But I don't know if that, there's their same thing to do, but if that's a safety
Yeah, I can
issue.
talk with, I'm not familiar with the whole bridge engineering world, but I can talk to some people that I work with about that and, show some pictures to them and see what, folks that work on V-Trans projects to see what they think about it. And we'll be following up with, do we have any more?
No, that was just the ones that I agree with.
So definitely got some good input and knowing where that access is going in. That's pretty critical to know that, and just kind of general.
There's a good
thoughts.
shot where that arc's going kind of around that green.
Is that right here?
No.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just,
Is it right there, Eric?
yeah, just above that corner right there is where the driveway's going in.
Okay.
Right there, yeah, right there, Michelle.
Yeah.
In earlier notes, or actually in your proposal, you mentioned a survey after this meeting that folks who were not able to attend tonight could review the information and respond to a survey. Is that still an option?
I'm not aware of that, if there's a survey already out there, but we are certainly open for input. I can check with Valerie to see the best way to get comments from people that weren't here, and they certainly have access to the PowerPoint presentation.
Jenny, you've clearly done a lot of work on this, and I certainly appreciate it. It's been very informative.
Unfortunately, I don't really have any magic bullet solutions here tonight. I wish I had, some better, unfortunately we have some significant constraints here, but if there's, if anyone else has any other thoughts after this, I can certainly, my email's up here, but definitely let Valerie know when she can get in touch with me. Thank you for coming.
We could close the Lincoln Road. We only have one house on that.
There you go. Close it both.
One house on Bristol. We got more houses on Briggs Hill.
Yeah, we do.
Lincoln Road.
And you can access the house on Lincoln Road from Briggs Hill.
That's right, you can. Driveway comes in the back.
Thank you very much.
But no, I remember a few years ago, it was Tim at Madison County Regional Planning said, Lincoln Road, we all know is washed out 2-3 times, and said, why don't you ought to officially close that road to Lincoln and make everybody go over Briggs Hill.
Yeah, but can you imagine going up that hill, or going up that hill?
Well, trailer trucks going up there to make the deliveries and stuff.
Well, you'd have to realign the hill.
You would, you definitely would have to do it then.
Could you take the steepness out of
One
that?
of the things that
You would have to end up out in Parker's Field.
Starting going right through.
I mean, it'd be
Right.
major.
Well, that seems really extremely low.
$836,000 worth.
It did seem a little low when I crunched the numbers.
Well,
And it's just, preliminary based off,
Moving the road, I
LiDAR,
think
which
it's
isn't
gonna be
100%
With
accurate.
no ledge blasting or nothing of that nature.
What I,
Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.
I think we,
Glad I invited you Saturday, Chris.
Yeah.
So Chris at the.
Go to one meeting, you learn about the next.
Yeah.
You want to come, buddy?
You said it was an accident involving a moose once?
She did.
Well, we just put a moose crossing sign and we're done.
There we go.
So it's down-
Ed can't get a tractor crossing, but we can get a moose crossing it. In a heartbeat, we can get a-
Moose crossing
in a heartbeat, we
sign
can
and,
get a moose crossing.
yeah, that and caution, nude sunbathers ahead, and we've got,
That'll slow everybody down.
yeah, everybody between the two. And thank you guys.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Have a good night.
So I'll wait for instructions from you guys. We'll settle on a shared strategy.
Yeah, I think we've got to get there before, there's no sense in you going anywhere until we decide
Piss them all off.
a direction, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
I saw him at the, of course, at the meeting.
Is that it? Are we good?
I believe so. All we have is, accounts
warrant.
payable warrant.
Accounts payable.
Tasha, do you have the number?
You sleeping?
She's
I
coming.
do, I just don't have it right in front of me. Hang on.
No, I can get it. Hang on just a
Okay.
second.
It was updated today, so.
Right, yep.
That on here, Valerie? Was that on here?
So we.
We said one agenda
Go out
item.
and
Yes,
sign it.
only.
We'll go out and
Why
sign
couldn't
it
just
on the
wait
way
till
out.
next Monday night?
You don't have to sign it tonight.
I know.
It's on there.
It's the point. It was the point.
That right there cost me $35,000.
Yeah, well, this is too.
It's out of the truck engine.
Which
Big truck,
A
which
big
truck?
truck?
Yeah.
Shear off?
Freightliner?
Where?
The
Mac?
Sterling.
Sterling, uh-oh. I didn't even get to drive it this year.
No, it's all back together.
How do you do that?
It
Just where?
was just sitting there. I
That was a valve, right?
Yeah. Two of them.
Oh, that's one. You're probably a big truck.
Are you ready for the number?
Tasha, you ready?
It's 28,295.51.
Alrighty. So we
Actually, no,
will,
that's wrong. There was an updated one.
I think
Yeah, no,
that's
that's
the updated
it.
one.
That's the updated one.
20,
Yeah.
did you say 28 or 29?
28.
28.
It's
It
lower.
says 20. Oh, that's right. That's right. It got
Yeah.
lowered. Okay.
Right.
down, yeah. That's odd, huh?
I know. Very confusing.
And Joel, to your comment, I don't consider this a particular additional agenda item. It's just a routine.
I get it, but
It's
Yeah,
not
Joel.
not a
Stop
substantive agenda item.
busting heads, Joel.
sorry, Jack.
Thank you. I did.
Motion,
Thank you.
Thank you.
are we doing motion to adjourn?
Donna's
Second.
about to fall asleep.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Good night,
Motion
everybody.
carried. Good night,
See you
everybody.
next week, next Monday.
Next week.